They found him face down in the silence, because in ADX, even death knows how to keep quiet. The official report said the tier was calm at 5:42 a.m., but anyone who's ever worked a shift inside the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum, ADX Florence, knows calm is just the sound of danger holding its breath. The alarms hadn't gone off yet. The cameras hadn't caught anything suspicious. But a guard doing the morning check stopped outside cell C13 and felt a chill that had nothing to do with Colorado's cold. Inside was Marcus Hale, one of the highest-profile inmates in the entire supermax system. Former cartel architect. Federal witness. A man whose testimony had helped take down a syndicate that reached from Phoenix to Puerto Rico. By the time they opened the door, he was gone. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this one only gets darker. What made the discovery impossible to ignore wasn't the death itself. People imagine Supermax as a fortress where nothing happens, but the truth is, pressure builds until the cracks start whispering. What unsettled the staff was that Hale's cell was locked from the inside. There were no signs of a struggle. No weapon. No obvious cause. Just a man who was alive at lights out and dead by sunrise. And in ADX, that kind of mystery is not just uncommon, it's a threat to the institution's entire identity. The corridor outside Hale's pod felt wrong all morning. Guards walked slower. Radios clicked more often. Even inmates in neighboring cells stayed oddly quiet, like they knew something the staff didn't. Word travels fast in prison. Faster in a supermax where the only thing inmates trade more than contraband is information. Within hours, investigators from the Bureau of Prisons swarmed the tier. They replayed the night's footage again and again, grainy angles, blind corners, flickers of static, but the cameras hadn't captured a single abnormal movement. No shadows passing where they shouldn't. No cell disturbances. Nothing. Yet everyone on that unit felt the same thing. Someone had helped Hale die. The first rumor came from a guard with 12 years' experience, someone who understood the political minefield of saying the wrong thing. He said he noticed a fresh scrape on the metal by the cell's food slot. Small, almost invisible. But new. And it didn't look accidental. Others whispered a different possibility. They said Hale had been terrified during the last few weeks, pacing endlessly, talking to himself, refusing recreation even though he was entitled to 2 hours in the yard. Some claimed he told medical staff he was receiving coded threats, threats that shouldn't have been possible in a facility built to isolate every man from every other. But the most disturbing detail came from an officer who'd inspected Hale's cell 2 days earlier. Hale had asked the simple question, how long does it take for someone to disappear in here before anyone asks why? The murder, if it was a murder, risked more than an internal inquiry. Hale was still tied to ongoing federal cases. His cooperation had rattled some powerful cages. Losing him inside the most secure prison in America wasn't just embarrassing, it hinted at something bigger, something institutional. By evening, the warden ordered an unprecedented measure, temporary full lockdown on all ADX high-security ranges. No showers. No recreation. No legal calls. Nothing but steel, concrete, and silence. That's when an inmate on the adjacent tier started screaming. Not words, just raw panic. He claimed he'd heard something the night Hale died. Something moving through the ventilation system. Something too heavy to be air and too quiet to be human. Most dismissed him as unstable. But one detail couldn't be ignored. The vents in Hale's unit had been flagged during last year's inspection. Not for security failure, never that. But for unexplained structural wear. At 9:13 p.m., the warden received a call from Washington. Secure everything. No leaks. No speculation. Whatever had happened in cell C13, someone with authority wanted it sealed tight. And yet, a single piece of overlooked evidence was already sitting inside the property room. A folded scrap of paper found under Hale's mattress. A message written shakily in pencil. 7 words that would detonate the entire investigation. The note under Hale's mattress looked like a scrap of trash, creased, damp, nearly unreadable. But once investigators smoothed it open, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Just 7 words, carved into the page with a trembling hand. They're coming through the walls next. Men break in ADX. They hallucinate. They spiral. But this wasn't some delusional scrawl. On the back were dates, 3 nights when Hale claimed he heard tapping inside his cell. Not from the tier. Not from neighbors. From the infrastructure itself. That changed the entire direction of the case. Investigators dug into maintenance logs and quickly hit the first red flag. 2 months earlier, a contractor had reported possible unauthorized access indicators in the service tunnel behind Hale's range. The report was never escalated. Never investigated. It was quietly closed with a single line, "No security impact." And the contractor who filed it? He resigned shortly after. Pressure inside the supermax thickened. Guards walked tighter. Radios chirped more than usual. Administrators held briefings behind locked steel doors. A high-profile death was bad enough. But the idea that someone could compromise the physical backbone of ADX, that was the kind of breach Washington feared most. The investigative lead, Cordell, a man who'd spent half his career dealing with internal cover-ups, began reviewing Hale's written requests. Buried in the stack were multiple pleas for security reassessment, each dismissed as unsubstantiated. Hale had insisted someone was accessing areas of the unit at night, someone who wasn't supposed to. Cordell interviewed inmates on Hale's corridor. Most stayed silent. But one lifer finally leaned toward the food slot and whispered, "Hale wasn't scared of us. He was scared of someone who could walk in without a sound." "Someone with keys?" Cordell asked. "No. Someone with permission." The comment gnawed at him. By the afternoon, SIS pulled the full access logs for Hale's unit. That's when a new anomaly appeared. One civilian maintenance worker had logged more entries, at more odd hours, than any of his peers. Sometimes just minutes apart. Sometimes with no recorded work order. He left ADX 2 weeks before Hale died. No one called it evidence. But everyone recognized the smell of it. 2 theories emerged. Theory 1, someone exploited a blind spot in the structure, accessing Hale's cell without the cameras catching it. Theory 2, Hale was silenced, and the method was designed to make the entire event look impossible. Either way, the message was clear: ADX wasn't as sealed as it claimed to be. That evening, a maintenance tech inspected the airflow behind Hale's cell. One vent showed strange readings, too much disruption for an untouched system. When he removed the panel, 2 details stood out like blood on snow. A smear of disturbed dust. And a torn strip of fabric caught on the metal edge, dark, durable, unmistakably part of staff-issued ADX uniform material. Not inmate clothing. Not contraband. Staff. Someone with clearance had been inside a restricted section on the night Hale died. But the most damning evidence wasn't in the vents, the logs, or the dust. It was in a place no one had bothered to examine. A place that would expose what really happened in cell C13. The breakthrough came from a place so ordinary no one had bothered to check it earlier, the old analog archive room. ADX stores decades of maintenance schematics there, including versions of the prison's internal layout that were never uploaded to the modern digital system. Cordell went searching for historical blueprints to compare against the current design. What he found instead was the missing puzzle piece. Tucked between 2 outdated ventilation diagrams was a restricted addendum, stamped, signed, and partially redacted. It detailed a structural modification approved years earlier, a narrow inspection channel running behind the high-security range Hale lived on. The channel wasn't illegal, but it was classified far above normal clearance levels. And more importantly, it was accessible only to a handful of staff and contracted specialists. One of those specialists was the same maintenance worker who'd logged those unusual late-night entries. Cordell took the file straight to the warden. The warden's face tightened. He knew exactly what the document implied. that someone with authorized access could enter the inspection channel, move behind Hale's cell, and interact with the interior without ever standing on camera. Not a dramatic breach. Not a Hollywood-style escape route. Just quiet, technical access to a space no inmate should have known existed. But Hale had known. His dates matched nights when that channel was accessed. The warden locked down the entire floor again and ordered a full sweep of the inspection tunnel. It didn't take long to find what Cordell feared: faint shoe impressions in the dust, matching the profile of ADX staff boots. A small tool imprint on the metal seam behind Hale's cell. And embedded in the insulation, barely visible without close inspection, was a dried fleck of something consistent with residue from Hale's cell interior. Not proof of a homicide, but unmistakable proof that someone had been there. Hours later, federal agents detained the former maintenance contractor at his home in another state. He didn't confess, didn't explain, didn't resist. He simply asked for a lawyer and kept his eyes forward as if he already knew what would be pinned on him. But the case didn't end with his arrest, because investigators soon discovered he hadn't been acting alone. His keycard activity showed patterns that matched shifts of a mid-level supervisor, someone who approved his access, signed off his logs, and altered maintenance records to erase irregularities. A man with 20 years in the system and a clean record until the day Hale died. The motive was never fully revealed. Some believed Hale's pending cooperation threatened people outside the prison. Others suspected a personal debt or pressure from organized groups with long reach. The Bureau of Prisons kept the findings tightly controlled, releasing only a vague public statement about procedural failures. Inside ADX, though, the message spread fast: if someone with a badge wants you gone, even the Alcatraz of the Rockies won't save you. Policy shifts followed. Inspection channels were sealed or outfitted with additional sensors. Staff access logs were centralized and audited by outside teams. And the warden who ordered the lockdown quietly retired 3 months later. Cordell filed the case report and walked out of ADX feeling the same chilling truth every veteran eventually accepts: supermax isn't just steel and security. It's a system built on trust. And once that trust cracks, the walls themselves start whispering. Hale's cell was repainted. His number reassigned. Officially, no wrongdoing was admitted. Unofficially, every guard on that tier knew the truth: someone had reached through the very structure of the prison to silence a man who thought he was untouchable. And the scariest part wasn't how it happened. It was how easily it could happen again. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.